Hi everyone, welcome back to our channel, HOU Living in Houston. And today we have a special treat for you. Here we are with Bill McCarthy, an expert in sub 2.
Well, thank you very much. A little bit about myself. I've been in real estate for about 25 years. I started the School of Hard Knocks from going to a local RIA group, traveling 70 miles one way when I moved to the East Coast. And I had lost everything. So I was looking for something that I could do, not corporate world again. And I didn't want to start a contracting business again, which I have. And I wanted something that gave me the freedom and the flexibility to be able to do what I like that fits my personality. And I read a book called Rich Dad, Poor Dad. And that really opened my eyes to what real estate could do. And then after that, I became just engulfed with reading as much as I could. And then I found the Real Estate Investors Association group, Jack's RIA in Jacksonville, Florida. And I went down there and they had these quick start courses that got into the basics of like a wholesale, explained the process of writing a contract, the rehab part, private or hard money, the closing, the whole aspect of marketing. And I did that for about 6 months before I realized, okay, I'm ready to go out there and try to write something under contract. And I did my first one in about 6 months, and I was scared to death. And like I hadn't done anything before, but it was just, I got it under contract, rehabbed it in about 30 days, I had it under contract and sold in 60 days. And I thought to myself, well, I didn't screw that up. So fast forward, every time I did a deal, I invested in my education. And then I ran across a guy still teaching. He's great. If you get a chance to hear him, Ron LeGrand is one of the guys that I went and paid for his course. And he was talking about going and getting the deed. And I'm like, what do you mean, going and getting the deed? Who would give up their house? And it is fascinating, but they did. So, but it took a little bit more, learning the steps, how to market for them, how to talk to them, how to negotiate, and why would anybody give up their house? Well, Florida is a unique state. Unlike Texas, it's a judicial state. That if they do a foreclosure, it takes 90 days and it goes through a judge and it could be prolonged. So that gave you as an investor time to meet the seller and negotiate it. I specialized in short sales, but I also would find out, well, these houses don't need this much work and they're just wanting to walk, but I just want, a few $1,000s or whatever it was, and I could take over the mortgage. So back then, I would go over there with notary in hand and get them to deed over their house right then and there. I would take it over, and then I would do my own research as far as the title and stuff, and I had a title company I've been doing business with to check title. But fast forward to today, I've done several hundred properties across the country, and we're going into a really unique time in the market where sub 2 is going to be a very popular technique for realtors and for home sellers to be able to sell their house and not mess up their credit. So there's some really benefits to the seller. So now we're at this time in the market, and sub 2, it's a very unique and it's becoming a hot topic across the country.
Especially for investors too. For investors, this is the time to come out and take advantage of it.
Well, there's some people out there that have made it very, they've really become popular teaching it, even though it's only been a few years, 5 years that they've been teaching it, but it's been going on for decades. People just didn't know how to do it, and they thought most mortgages, most realtors, I really appreciate and I love realtors, but they're not taught this in real estate school. And what you don't understand must be illegal. It's like, okay, who said it was illegal? Well, I don't know about it. It's got to be illegal. So tell me what you would like to know about it.
Okay, well, we want to start with explaining to our viewers exactly what sub 2 is.
Well, sub 2 is taking a mortgage subject to buying a property subject to the mortgage, which means is the seller transfers the ownership of the property in a deed, security deed, but the mortgage stays in their name. And you're thinking, well, who would do that? Well, there's a lot of benefits to doing that. But basically, it's somebody buying the property, putting the title in their name, and they're taking the responsibility of the mortgage, but they're not assuming the mortgage.
And what would be a disadvantage to doing the sub 2?
For the buyer or for the seller?
For both.
Okay. Well, what I teach and what I want my fellow investors to know is what's your cash on cash, and that's your return after your money's out. So your entry fee is what it's referred to, is all the cost it takes to get into that property. Realtor commissions, repair costs if it is, back payments if there is some, closing costs. And then hopefully they have enough equity that covers that initial investment. For example, there's a property that may be worth $250,000. Well, those days are almost gone. But $250,000, they owe $200,000, and a realtor or an investor brings it to you and say, "Hey, here's the deal," and the payment of the property is less than market rent. Okay, that's an ideal situation. And the lower the payment and the higher the market rent is the higher cash on cash and eventually long-term return.
So what criteria do you consider when evaluating whether a property is suitable for a sub 2 deal?
Well, first I'd look at I want to know the repair costs first, because there's a lot of houses that don't need repairs. They don't have much equity, and you would want to go if it's a 2% or 4% mortgage, then the seller may only want or if there's no equity, but it's still a good rental portfolio property, then you would say, okay, how much do you want out of it? Work it out, and $5,000 or $10,000. You still have a cash flow. That's the number one criteria for a good sub 2. And then it goes down to how much repairs are you going to be in. You don't want to take on a property like that for your portfolio and go in there and have $40,000, $50,000 worth of repair. In that case, I would do a short sale. So I take it's one or two options. If you have those tools, that knowledge, then you know right away, what can I do with this property? And what's the owner's motivation? That's a big criteria. A lot of them, but they just don't understand the process, and it's really, I don't want to say it's simple. It's not. They don't understand it because it hasn't been taught, and so now that it's our responsibility to explain it and explain the benefits and the potential downfalls.
Yeah, I think it just sounds like too good to be true, right? That's the thing. So sometimes people think if something's too simple or too easy, maybe it's not something that's exactly.
Well, it's got to work for both of you, seller and buyer. Exactly. It doesn't make sense. And me personally, I'm not in a charity business. Yeah. I have to be for profit. Yeah. So that's the goal, is that maybe you won't get a lot of profit up front, but maybe in a few years, or as the market comes back, you got the appreciation. Plus, there's the depreciation, and another benefit to the seller is they get to write off the mortgage insurance or mortgage interest.
Yeah.
From an investment standpoint, just look at what I bought this a little bit, but potential Airbnb.
Oh, absolutely.
Get that cash flow, get that stuff too, turn it into Airbnb, clean it up, put furniture in there, and get that cash.
That's absolutely right. So what you want to do is evaluate, but I don't buy properties based on Airbnb.
Right.
You don't ever get in trouble because you don't know where Airbnb is going to go and what city ordinance to go in there, and you guys know that so well. But base it off long-term rent, and then you'll be okay. But the benefit is, could you put it into Airbnb? Absolutely. That's a bonus.
Yeah, that's true. How do you handle the existing mortgage on a property when executing a sub-2 deal?
How do I handle the mortgage?
Yes.
Basically, the paperwork that we have, at closing, there's a few documents in the package. It's a deed package. We get a release of authorization release. There's a limited power of attorney that we can close if we want to sell the house in 2 or 3 years or refinance it, whatever the case. We can close it out on the seller's behalf. If the seller moves to a different state or out of the country, you've got a limited, which means it pertains to that mortgage.
Okay.
So that it's and that protects the seller as well as the buyer, especially the buyer, because if you can't get in touch with the seller, what are you going to do when you have to close the documents out? And insurance, if you have a claim with a hurricane, God forbid, we don't have a hurricane this year, and you have one of these properties and you lose a roof, well, the insurance is going to send the money to the mortgage company and then to the previous owner, and who's going to expedite that? Who's going to be able to sign on that? But there's ways to deal with the insurance company. You go and change insurance carriers if you'd like, or do it before the transaction to somebody you've been doing insurance with, so they know who you are. Mm-hmm. And if you have any problems or anything like that, they can help you, with the claim or the, getting the claim settled or whatever.
So, what are the potential risks and challenges associated with sub-2 investing, and how you mitigate them?
The risk, are you talking about as the buyer, as the investor?
Correct.
Well, what I try to teach in my courses and guidance is evaluate the property. Number one, just like wholesale or anything else. Yeah. You don't want to overpay for an asset that could not return the money that you and the time that you hope to get out of it. So the risk and reward are based on cash on cash, which I have a analyzer that has about 4 or 5 questions that tell you, okay, this looks like it could be a potential buy. And then from that point on, then you want to look at the condition of the property. You want to know that, okay, do I have to replace any major items? Yeah. Lord knows. But the risk, you got to be able to have the funds to do it. I'm sure you've been investing for long enough. I don't tell any of the new investors, unless you have reserve capital of $50,000 or more to get in the rental market. I mean, you don't know what the renting it out long term. Short term, I don't think there's as much as damage or problems as there is long term rentals, because if you get a bad tenant in there and they happen to not pay for a period of time, the eviction, and then I had a tenant one time that stole my AC unit on the inside and the outside while living there. Oh wow! So the things that you're going to deal with in any kind of rental, whether it's sub-2 or buy and hold, whatever you're going to deal with. But I look at the risk is a lot less than it is going out and putting your own name on the mortgage and financing it and doing everything else. So, but it all comes down to analyzing the deal.
So have you, of course, we're looking from an investment standpoint, but have you run by anybody who's been subject to get into the primary home?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, it's a great source to, if you're experienced and you do it and you want to do it for your own personal home, absolutely upgrade. You can upgrade from $300,000, $500,000 to $1 million. It depends what your revenue stream is. It all comes down to that. I mean, there's going to be sub-twos on the ocean front. I mean, they're going to be across the board because, unfortunately, as a nation, we get comfortable when everything's great, and then when it comes down, we don't have enough reserves to take care of it. But there's also those situations where people have medical issues. If a spouse passes away, gets held up one way or another, whatever the case may be. So those are times that sellers really need us, where those higher end homes aren't selling on the market like they used to. Especially in Austin, where they're really kind of taking a deep dive. There's layoffs in Seattle, where Microsoft and so those are real life situations where those houses got up in Austin. You could, case in point, if you bought a house for $1 million last year, or when you had 4%, your payment was around $4,000. Now, at 7% interest, it's going to be $7,000, $8,000. People buy payments. They don't buy assets when they're getting it for their own home. And kind of went on a rabbit trail on that. But for your own home, yes, it's a great tool for somebody if they just want to do it for their own home.
Can you share a success story or a case study of a sub-2 deal you completed?
Absolutely. I could do several, but one I did, it's on Howell Grove Lane. I won't tell the physical address. I could, can't remember, it's 5 digits, 16 or something like that, but it was a 5-bedroom house, 4 bathrooms, 3,300 square feet. It was an older couple, sweet couple, and they were, the mortgage was $120,000, $122,000, something like that. And they had to move to California for medical, and they wanted to be closer to the kids, and they needed a quick out, and they were about 3 months behind. So I went over there and met with them. I explained to the process just exactly as I have today. And I asked them, what are they looking to get out of it? And they said, well, we'd like to get $10,000. Well, the property, even on Zillow, was worth $220,000. So there was equity in there, and I was able to give them $10,000. And it did need some updating, not a lot, but it needs some updating. And I went and bought that property. Their payment was only $1,000 a month, okay, for a 5-bedroom house. The rent at the time it was around $2,200. So that house would have cash flowed real well. At the time, I was working in a different industry, and it was an oil and gas industry, and my position was phased out. So I ended up selling it. Well, I rehabbed the house while I was living there. I went in there, moved in there to live in it, to be able to be there, keep an eye on it. And I rehabbed it, and I think I sold it and about 8 months later, I sold it for, I think, $275. And it was, new carpet, new paint. I like to put on my rehabs solar screens. It really makes the house look good, and it helps with the energy. I did that, and I got a buyer within 2 or 3 weeks. And then, now today, I just did it. I had a report, and I taught this on the class. Did I teach it on the class? No. I taught it in a sub-2 class. That house today is worth over $400,000, and the market rent is, I think it was $3,000 a month. So that would have been a $2,000 a month plus what, $130,000 equity. And I did that one in 2015. I've been doing, different businesses since then, but that was the one that it was a beautiful house, and I'm looking to do it again, just to get back into it. I've been sidetracked with different businesses. So now I'm teaching it and I'm getting back into it and looking for deals myself, and it's a great way to get intro without going through the whole rehab process. Although you can do that, there's so many facets and directions you can go with this that it opens up new doors without having to get hard money loans. And you can partner with people knowing that there's equity. So I don't get into sub-2 unless there's enough equity above and beyond what I got into it. All the entry fees and closing costs and commissions or whatever. I like a buffer. So those are the things that I say that, and that one certainly had a buffer. In fact, I bought the house fully furnished. So speaking about Airbnb, I wouldn't have done anything to it, really. The carpet wasn't bad. I was just selling the house. So
Okay, that's awesome.
if I'd have known about it back then, I think it would be different now. I would be probably still have it.
Do you have anything else to add?
No, I think we covered a lot, and I'm glad we can get this for our audience, our HOU.co audience.
Absolutely. What I would like to do, whoever your audience is, whether it's an investor or a realtor, knowing that this is a tool for realtors that they should know, could help them sell houses. If they know what their seller's motivation is and how desperate, if they're desperate, like if they're in another house and they couldn't sell their previous house and it's vacant and they're bleeding capital, realtors should bring it to you right away, or whoever's in the business. And that's what we're teaching. We're teaching realtors how to be able to do this, and we explain it to them like I've explained it to you, so they have a way to sell a property and help their sellers out.
No, I really like the way you explained it. I think it was a way that anybody can understand. Whether you're a seller, you don't need to be a realtor to understand what you just said. Whether you're a seller or buyer, like it's something that'll give people options, to get more creative.
Well, with people losing their job, we get a recession, if we get spiked up to 5% unemployment, we've been very fortunate here because we have low unemployment, but still, it happens in every industry, every recession or whatever. But it's a valuable tool for realtors. They should know.
Yes, I agree. So thank you so much for your time. Really appreciate it. And I don't know if you want to add anything else?
Well, there's going to be some questions that people may have. And I'm just going to bring them up if you don't mind.
Yeah, for sure.
First of all, is it legal? And yes, it is absolutely legal. One of the other questions is, what happens if the mortgage company calls for loan due? Well, I have some strategies to deal with that, but rarely do they ever call a mortgage due when they changes ownership. So there's paperwork that I've developed over the years that helps you be more in control of the situation. But very rarely do they call a mortgage on due. Another one is, what about if somebody wants to buy another house and their debt to income ratio is not there because they're out of the house and they don't have a way to verify the income? Well, there's a couple of ways you can deal with that. Usually, and the best way I like to do it and set up the closing is that first of all, if they're going to get another loan, have them stay in contact with you so that if you want to be able to talk to their underwriters, don't go through anything, don't go through the mortgage broker, don't go through anything. The underwriter is going to ask for a certain debt to income ratio and how they can explain it to the new mortgage holder. One of the things we do is we put it with a servicing company. So that's a guaranteed paying out, to a mortgage company. When they see that being made, then they don't question that that's actually being serviced by a professional third-party servicing company. And it handles the paperwork and everything else. The second thing is that you can always write up a lease for 3 months. Give them a lease for 3 months on the house if that fulfills the underwriting requirements for their new loan. So there's ways to help them get their other loan, but it's important to be able that they contact you to say, let me talk to the underwriter. And it's usually a couple of papers and a couple of forms to fill out, and that's it. But you need to, some mortgage brokers don't understand it, but all you need to do is talk to an underwriter who needs a certain document requirement by the mortgage company, by the mortgager that's going to be getting a new mortgage. Let me think, what else is there? I'm sure there's going to be some others that people think about. I did a video yesterday on it, so I should know it. But I am trying to, again, if a realtor brings you a property that's in distress, you want to assure them that they're going to get paid. And it comes down to a net sheet, which is basically what you have for your side of it, but it has to be a cash flow net sheet and a cash on cash analyzer. Yeah. That it's good for you too.
Actually, there is one more question. How do you communicate and build relationships with sellers to gain their trust in substitutes? Substitute transactions.
How do you gain sellers' trust? Well, I think the best way, as you would know as realtors, building rapport is asking them what's their concerns, having these answers ready to be able to explain to them, but just listening to them. What's going on? I, as well as y'all do, become a counselor, and you become somebody that they can trust that, hey, I have your interest in mind as well as mine. And how can I make this work for you? And how can I make it work for me? And just let's walk. So as we sit across the table, conversationally wise, I come in there alongside you and say, let's look at this problem together. And let's figure it out. And then, will this work for you? And then if they have objections, that means they're interested. You just got to understand how to overcome those objections, answer them, and the answers are there. They're out there. It's just, and real estate is like a buffet. There's something different about every one of them, but it's all about one-on-one relationship.
Anything else you want to add?
I hope I covered as much as I did. I probably forgot something, but that's okay. I'm here anytime you have any questions. I'll be glad to answer.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
So to all our viewers, if you have any more questions, you can write in the comments. We're going to put a link to Bill's YouTube channel. So if anything else you need to know, please contact us or him through our channel. Thank you so much. Subscribe to our channel. Bye.
Have a good day.